Well, students, good evening all. I hope you all are doing great. Welcome to the live streaming of the daily news analysis session for 27th July 2022. I hope you all are doing great and uh, will be understanding the important news articles of 27th July with the educator Prithviraj Singh. Let us begin with this session. But on the first page of the Hindu, there was an article about Supreme Court asking the government, for the irrational poll freebies. Well, you all know, students, that just before the elections, the the incumbent party, promises many freebies, to be distributed to the people. It can be in the form of, let's say, free cycle, free laptop, alcohol, and the list is very long. Now, this actually, goes against the principle of free and fair elections, because elections are influenced, you know, with such freebies, then it would affect the decision of the voter, and it would in turn affect the outcome of the elections. So therefore, Supreme Court is asking the government that can such promises of irrational poll freebies be curtailed or be curbed. Now, there are different opinions about this. Well, there are some who say that it is good for the industry because they would procure the material from the industry, so it would improve the economy of the local industry. But majority of the opinions are against such distribution of irrational poll freebies to win elections, because they put pressure on the finances of the government. Right? It unnecessarily puts a fiscal burden over the government, and this in turn would actually, because money is not there on the trees. If something is being distributed free, the government may, recover it either by increasing the taxes or cutting down the subsidies. So the burden might always fall on the future generations, right? So freebies are not appropriate. They affect the the philosophy, the principle of free and fair elections. They put fiscal burden on the state, because, and we know that there is an act of the parliament called as FRBMA, which is Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. It says that the fiscal deficit of the state must not overshoot 3% of the GDP. Right? That means the fiscal deficit should always be less than equal to 3% of the GDP, either of the state and that of the or that of the center. Right. So such freebies actually put fiscal burden or fiscal pressure on the government, right, and it results into macroeconomic instability. So therefore, Supreme Court has asked the center to find out from the Finance Commission. And mind you, Finance Commission is a constitutional body formed under Article 280 of the Constitution 280, and it lays down the principle of the distribution of of revenue between the center and the states. All the revenue that is being incurred by the center is being distributed to the states, by a formula, and this is being devised by the Finance Commission. So it is asking the Supreme Court, the apex court is asking the center to find out from Finance Commission if there is a way to curb political parties from promising and distributing irrational freebies during electoral campaigns or election campaigns. Now, whether such policies are financially viable and those things are being discussed. Now, the Finance Commission is an independent body, as I just mentioned, and because there are irrational freebies amount to bribery and unduly influences voters. Now, Election Commission of India, which is again a constitutional body under Article 324, has a very different opinion about the freebies. It says that, Election Commission cannot regulate state policies, and because Supreme Court, if in case if asked Election Commission, then Election Commission, right on the front has said that it cannot regulate state policies and decisions taken by the winning party when they form the government. Getting wrong. Such an act without enabling law provisions would be an overreach of powers, because Election Commission is does not entitled to regulate the policies of the state and the decisions taken by the winning party when they form the government. That is outside the purview of the powers of election commission. Right? So, whereas the court says that the center must actually take a stand on the issue and the government must consult the finance commission for suggestions. Well, students, you must understand that there is no provision for de-recognizing a political party for distribution of irrational freebies. So, this is something which has to be mentioned very clearly. Understand very clearly that there is no provision for de-recognizing any political party if found distributing some irrational freebies. You cannot de-recognize it. And so there is no such provision as of date which would de-recognize the political party for distribution of irrational freebies. And it said that the parties can be deregistered only if they had registered through fraud or forgery, or if they were declared illegal by the center, or if they stopped abiding by the constitution. So all the provisions for deregistering a political party are mentioned in the law, and only those conditions, if are fulfilled, then only the party would be deregistered or derecognized. Right. Now, so this is the case all about, because today problem is that the states, all the 28 states, taken together have in total debts of over 70 lakh crore. Right. So there are debts of over 70 lakh crore. And on that, if the political parties, promises of distributing some irrational poll freebies, that would put financial pressure on the exchequer. So therefore, Supreme Court has explored this issue. I hope it is clear. Well, moving to the next article. So this is the image of the freebies being distributed by the political parties in form of rice, liquor, money, consumables, so on and so forth, so as to lure the voters. Now, moving to the next news article on the screen. Now, Russia would soon leave the International Space Station after 2024. Right? We know that there is the International Space Station which do the research and exploration of space, and all the scientific researches in the zero gravity, are being carried on by International Space Station. And International Space Station is a joint project, and it is being run by various space agencies like Russia, United States, Europe, Japan, and Canada. So there is no China here as a the member of International Space Station. So Russia, US, then European Space Agency, Japanese Space Agency, Canada. There are five countries which jointly run the International Space Station. And Russia will soon pull out from the International Space Station after 2024, and instead it will focus on building its own space station, own orbiting station. Because any which ways, NASA and other international partners hope to keep the space station running until 2030. Getting my point? That means the international partners, they are hoping that the space station would run until 2030, and post that they would think of a new setup, because it's a very old project, because it was started in the year 1998. So it's been almost 24 years. It's there into service, and now they are looking to have a new space station. Right now, here there are some key takeaways from this article. Like the space agency of Russia is called as Roscosmos, right? Roscosmos, and they would be coming up with a new international space station in the year 2000, after 2024. So I hope it is clear. So normally the International Space Station orbits around 400 kilometers from Earth, and it do the scientific research of the space from there. And there are some astronauts which are being there in the space station, which are there on board on the space station, which do all the research activities. So at present, there are three Russian astronauts, three Americans, and one Italian. Now, there is also here something to be noted upon because before International Space Station, it was the Soviet Union which had its own space station, and it was in fact the first space station, and it was named as Mir. So Mir was a space station that operated in the low Earth orbit from 1986 till 2001, and it was operated by the erstwhile Soviet Union and later by Russian Federation. So it was named as Mir. Mir in Russia means peace. Now, Mir was the first modular space station and was assembled in orbit from 1986 to 1996, 86 to 96, and it had a greater mass than any previous spacecraft. At the time, it was the largest artificial satellite in orbit, and it was succeeded by International Space Station. Right. So we know that International Space Station came in the year 1998, and in fact, Mir was there since 1986. Right. So in this sense, it is the first modular space station, and it was operated by the Soviet Union and later by Russia. Mir. However, it was being disbanded in the year 2001, and it is stopped operation in the year 1996. I hope it is clear. Moving to the next news article on the screen. Guys, a very sad news coming from our neighboring country of Myanmar. We all know that Myanmar is under military rule, also called as junta rule, Junta, junta rule. And this junta rule or junta reign has actually overthrown the democratically elected National League of Democracy party. So it has overthrown the democratically elected party, which was being run by famous democratic pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi, who is also a Nobel laureate. Now, recently, the Myanmar's military government has executed on July 25th, that is on Monday this month. They have executed or given death punishment to four pro-democracy activists, and this has created, protests, resulted into protests and ripples across the liberal democracies like US and uh, countries in Europe. Now, the military rule there in Myanmar is also called as Tatmadaw, and it seized power from the democratically elected National League of Democracy party in February 2021. Now, the Janta rule, the military rule is being led by Senior Army General Min Aung Hyang. So Min Aung Hyang is the ruler of the Janata government, and it forms the administrative council. And following the coup, all the political leaders democratically elected, like Aung San Suu Kyi and many others of the NLD or National League of Democracy, were being detained immediately and are still in detention, serving the sentences. Now, it resulted into mass protests, also called as Spring Revolution against the regime and a parallel government. So they may ask you Spring Revolution and where it happened. And a parallel government was formed called as National Unity Government or NUG. Now it has an armed division. So NUG has an armed division known as People's Defense Force or PDF. And this PDF is being supported and trained by several armed ethnic groups. Correct. So in this sense, the Janta government or the military government is being protested by a parallel government called as National Unity Government or NUG, and it has a defense group called as People's Defense Group, which is being supported by various armed ethnic groups. Right. Now, since the coup in 2021, the tribunal, according to Iravadi, has sentenced around 113 people to death for their role in the armed resistance against the regime. But a UN spokesperson, has said that at least 1,500 people might have killed and around 11,000 to 12,000 detained are being detained by the Janata government. Perhaps there is also, a growing restlessness within the Janata government. There are many factions in the Janata government which are antithetical to the approach followed by the military government, and they are alienated with the policies, of the Janata government. In fact, some military and police officials have even joined the pro-democracy movement, which is a good sign. Now, the Janata government, being run by Min Aung Hlaing, may be thinking that the global focus today is on Ukraine war, and this is an opportunity to carry out something in its own backyard, right? And sadly, it came as a shock to the world when four pro-democracy activists were being executed, were being given capital punishment. Now, the NUG, which we just discussed, the parallel government, national unity government, has said that the Janta will have to pay the price legally. The military government has to pay the price legally, and the executions have made us more determined to topple the regime. Right. So, in this sense, it will act as a catalyst, against the military government, and it would give new wings to the pro-democracy movement. And with the execution, will the execution impact the ethnic conflicts between the groups, is something which has to be explored upon. Well, there are many countries, uh, you know, uh, like Cambodia, which is at present the chair of ASEAN, which is a regional bloc association of Southeast Asian nations. And today, at present, is being chaired by Cambodia. So Cambodia has strongly protested such military rule and such, execution of pro-democracy activists. And it said that it has caused great harm and concern among the ASEAN members and its external partners. Now, the senior general, did not, budge to the honor of ASEAN's 5-point consensus for peace and stability of Myanmar. So, a few years back, ASEAN came up with, a few months back, in fact, ASEAN came up with a 5-point consensus for peace and stability of Myanmar. But the general of the military government, Min Aung Hlaing, is not in any mood to accept these 5-point consensus. Now, the reason is the strong support from Russia and China to the military government, because Russia has strongly supported the Janta since the coup, and the friendship has been well displayed by the political and economic collaborations with Myanmar. Similarly, China also has huge investments in Myanmar, and it is in fact, it is the oldest ally of the Janta government or the military rule. Right. So, in fact, it has given the de facto recognition after the coup. So, as I said, that China has huge stakes in Myanmar because of its infrastructural projects and investments in the country. And in fact, even India has, have its projects in Myanmar, like, for example, Kaladan multimodal project, Sitwe Port Development Project, so on and so forth. Among ASEAN members, Thailand's proximity to the Janta is a known fact, right? So even one of the ASEAN members, definitely ASEAN is a 10-member bloc, of which Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, they all are the members. And one ASEAN member, Thailand, is strongly supporting the Janta government. So in this sense, there is a support from the crucial actors, and this actually gives energy, to the Janata government. So in this sense, the Tatma Dev's proxy Union Solidarity and Development Party may come back to power through a rigged election if it happens, in 2023. So it is a very sad news and a shocking news coming from our neighbor Myanmar, where pro-democracy activists are being executed, and it has sent ripples across the liberal democracies like US and many European countries. Moving ahead, well, recently the Chief Justice of India, N.V. Ramana, has has called for a practice of honest journalism. He said that it, because a democracy means free society, correct? And free society is the backbone of free society is free media. Now, if media itself is biased, is influenced, is working with some vested interest, then there is no point of having a free society, which is the basis of a democracy. Right? Now, today, he has also pointed that because media must not yield to pressures, because these days media houses have huge business interests and multiple ventures, are there, and in this sense, it is becoming they have external pressures, right? So it must not concede to the external pressures and the business interests. And recently, Chief Justice also remarked about the debates on electronic media and the social media, and they called them kangaroo courts, right? Because of something called as media trials. You know, I mean, giving judgment, declaring somebody innocent or guilty is the domain of judiciary. But these days, we have seen that media itself is acting as a trial court, getting sting operations. In this way, it is acting as a trial court. And that is the reason why and this is a very dangerous preposition, very dangerous situation. He said, and I quote, that debates on electronic media and social media are in this way, the media is acting as a kangaroo court. Now, when a media house has other business interests, it becomes vulnerable to external pressures, right? And often the business interests prevail over the spirit of independent journalism. Getting my point? So in this sense, if the media is biased, if it has business interests, it would automatically succumb to external pressures. And when there are external pressures on media, it would be a threat to the independence of journalism, or the spirit of independent journalism. And as a result, the democracy also gets compromised. Right. So Justice Ramana said, the Chief Justice Ramana said that independent journalism is the backbone of democracy, and we must encourage the practice of honest journalism. And in fact, it is the responsibility of the media houses to present facts, especially in Indian social scenario. People believe that whatever is printed is true. Right? Today, because people, whatever is being printed, whatever is being said in the media channels, they consider them as true. Right. So in this way, it has also resulted into lesser voter turnout. Right. So therefore, he called for the practice of honest journalism. Moving to the next news article. Well, there are three states in India: Maharashtra, Odisha, and Bihar, and they want a caste census. You know, mind you, caste census other than SC STs, right? And the last uh, caste-based census, where you had the data for OBC, was done by the British authorities in the year 1931. So I repeat, the last caste-based census, which came up with the data for OBC population in India, was happened in the year 1931. Post that, no caste-based census happened for OBC population. Getting my point? In 2011, also, it was a socio economic caste census, and they did came up with the SCST data, but then they never made it public. Right? Although the data on OBC was not collected. Right? So the last census which actually collected OBC data was 1931, right? And based on that only, the OBC population in the country is being explored, and it was being also taken as a base by BP Mandal Commission, which actually resulted into the provision of reservation for OBC, 27% reservation for OBC in jobs and educational institutions in India. And then it was also being held by Indira Saune case in 1991. 27% reservation was being legally accepted and was being held justifiable by the apex court in Indira Saune case, but with the rider that the reservation must not exceed 50%. Right? So in this way, Maharashtra, Odisha, and Bihar wants caste census, which would have data of all the castes, including SC, ST, and OBC. Moving to the next news article. Now, India has added 5 more Ramsar sites. Well, students, we know that Ramsar sites are the wetlands of international importance. Right now, there was a Ramsar Convention of the year 1961, and Ramsar is a place in Italy. Now, it identifies the wetlands across the world, and then gives spatial status of being the Ramsar site, so that the governments, the concerned governments, may ensure that these tracts of land are conserved and spared from encroachment. Right. So all the wetlands are which are very huge in area, and there are some conditions which have to be fulfilled for a wetland to be included in the list of Ramsar site, which we just discussed. Now, right, so recently India has added 5 more Ramsar sites, and in this sense, the tally touches 54, right, after the inclusion of 5 more sites. So earlier they were 49, and now the total has touched 54. There are 54 Ramsar sites, also called as wetlands of international importance. Now, the sites which are being added recently, very important from the exam point of view, are Karikili Bird Sanctuary, Pallikarnai Marsh Reserve Forest, and Pichavaram Mangrove Forest in Tamil Nadu. So there are 3 sites from the southern state of Tamil Nadu: Karikali Bird Sanctuary, Pallikarnai Marshland, as you can see, a pictorial representation, and Pichavaram Mangrove Forest in Tamil Nadu. So 3 from Tamil Nadu. One site is from Madhya Pradesh, which is Sakhya Sagar, and the 5th site is from Mizoram, the northeast state, also called as Pala wetlands. Right. So these are the 5 Ramsar sites. Uh, you know, 5 sites being added into the list of Ramsar sites. Now, India's Ramsar wetlands are spread over 11,000 square kilometers. Right, around 10% of the total wetland area in the country. Right. So this is clear. This clearly means that all the wetlands may not be called as, or may not be identified and designated as Ramsar sites. Right. So only when they fulfill certain conditions, they would be called as Ramsar sites or wetland of international importance. Right. So out of the total wetland area, 10% is being designated as the Ramsar sites, and this covers approximately 11,000 square kilometers spread across 18 states. Right. So the criteria which has been mentioned for a site to be declared as a Ramsar site, there are in fact 9 conditions, and either one of at least one of them must be fulfilled. The first condition is that it should support vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered species, right? Or threatened ecological communities. Is the second condition. The first is that it is whether it is supporting the vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered species. Second, does it support the threatened ecological communities? Uh, and third, if it regularly supports around 2,000 or more water birds. Right. Fifth, is it an important source of food for fishes, spawning ground, nursery, and or migration path on which fish stocks are dependent upon. Right? So these are the 9 conditions or the 9 criteria, and at least one of them must be fulfilled for a site to be declared as a Ramsar site or wetland of international importance. Now, the point is that does a site, if it is being declared as a Ramsar site, will it get some extra international funds? The answer is no. Right. So it does not necessarily. I mean, it may get, but it is not a mandatory condition. Right. It is not necessary that if a site is being designated as a Ramsar site, it will start getting some international funds. Right? But the point is, the states or the concerned government from now onwards ensure that these tracts of lands are conserved and spared from encroachment, right? So that means it's from now onwards, these wetlands would come under protection, and no encroachment can take place in those areas, right? Now, according to the Environmental Ministry, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in India, the wetlands are the area of marsh, fen, peatland, or water. Right? Now, whether natural or artificial, it can be natural or artificial. The areas of marsh, fen, and peatland. It may be permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing. It may be fresh, brackish, or salt water, including areas of marine water, the depth of which at the low tide does not exceed 6 meters. So that means they are shallow waters, but and not much depth is there, but does not include the river channels. So it does not clearly it has been mentioned by the Environment Ministry that it will not include the river channels, the paddy fields, the human-made water bodies, the tanks specially constructed for drinking water purposes, and structures specifically construed for aquaculture, salt production, recreation, and irrigation purposes. Right. So all these artificial, man-made uh, constructions like the human-made water bodies, tanks, for drinking water purposes, and structures specifically constructed for aquaculture, salt production, recreation, so on and so forth, are not included or would not be, designated as the Ramsar sites. Right. So very important article, and the 5 sites which are being included in the list of Ramsar sites. I hope it is clear. So you can see, friends, on the slide, there are 54, as I said, 54 Ramsar sites in India at present, and 5 are recently being added. Right? So here are they. In the state of Rajasthan, you can see Sambar Lake is there. Then Bharatpur Bird Sanctuary, also called as Kevla Dev Ghana National Park. Then you have Thol Lake Wildlife Sanctuary in Gujarat. Then Harike Lake is there in Punjab, over which Indira Gandhi Nehar project or canal is being built, which supplies the water to dry state of Rajasthan. In the south also there are many wetlands. Koleru Lake, Chilka Lake, we all know. Bhitarkanika in Odisha and Sundarbans, they all are wetlands of international importance for Ramsar sites. Moving ahead, well, recently you all would have seen that 19 Rajya Sabha MPs were being suspended in one shot, right, by the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha, Harivansh, and he's invoked the rule of the House and asked that the members were and said that the members in fact were disrupting the House proceedings. Right. So let us discuss what are the rules which are being invoked while suspending the members in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Right. Well, rule number 255, of Rajya Sabha, and under this rule, which is it talks about the withdrawal of member of the parliament. The chairman may direct any member whose conduct is, in his opinion, grossly disorderly to withdraw immediately from the council, and any member so ordered to withdraw shall do so forthwith and shall absent himself during the remainder of the day's meeting. Right. So, in this sense, under Rule 255, the suspension of the member or the withdrawal of the member is being carried upon. Now, the question is that how is suspension under Rule 255 different from Rule 256? Well, students, Rule 256 provides for suspension of the member, whereas 245 provides for lesser punishment, right? Because in Rule 256, the chairman may, if he deems it necessary, suspend a member from the service of the council for a period not exceeding the remainder of the session, right? So that means Rule 256 is being used to suspend the member from the service from the Rajya Sabha, not exceeding the remainder of the session, right? Let's say the session goes on for a month. So that member who is suspended under Rule 256 may not participate till the remainder of the session, till the end of that particular session. In this sense, 256 is much more harsher than Rule 255 because the suspension is for a larger time frame, right? Whereas 255 provides a lesser punishment, right? That means it may ask the member, the deputy chairman may ask the member to not participate or to absent himself or herself during the remainder of the day's meeting. Getting my point? So in this sense, 256 is less stringent than 255 is less stringent than 256, right? Now, what is the difference in the powers of Speaker and Chairman of Rajya Sabha? Well, like the Speaker in Lok Sabha, the Chairman of Rajya Sabha is empowered under Rule 255 of its rule book. Getting my point? So, in this sense, they both are entitled to Rule 255 of the rule book to direct any member whose conduct is in his opinion, grossly disorderly to withdraw immediately from the House. But unlike the Speaker, however, the Rajya Sabha chairman does not have the power to suspend the member. Right. That means 256 cannot be used by Rule 256 cannot be is not available for Rajya Sabha. That means Rajya Sabha chairman cannot suspend the member for the remainder of the session. He can suspend a member for the remainder of the day, but not the remainder of the session. So this is this and this means in fact that 255 255 which we just discussed has lesser punishment. So in this sense 256 cannot be used by Rajya Sabha chairman. He can only use 255 which provides for lesser punishment. Right. So it has been clearly said in the rule that a member who disregards the authority of chair or abuses the rules of the council by persistently and willfully obstructing the business of the house would attract the suspension order. And in such a situation, the house may adopt a motion suspending the member from the service of the house for a period not exceeding the remainder of the session. The house may, however, by another motion terminate the suspension. But this is another thing, right? So, so this one is an important article. Now moving to the editorial section on the screen. Now it explores the relationship of United States with West Asia and its new role in West Asia. Students, you all would be knowing that the American President Joe Biden recently visited two important West Asian countries of Saudi Arabia and Israel. Israel, you all know, is a all-time ally of United States, but the surprising visit was that of Saudi Arabia, because in the past few years, in fact, America has clearly taken a stand against Saudi Arabia, and in fact, its premier, Crown Prince Salman, was being alleged, to have his involvement in the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Right. So therefore, in 2019, President Biden, made it very clear that he would not have a relation with Saudi Arabia. Right. So, but so therefore, it is a very important visit. And at the backdrop of the Russian war in Ukraine, we all know that there are severe, sanctions being imposed on Russia after its invasion in Ukraine. And we also know that around 50 to 60% of the natural gas reserves are there in Russia. So therefore, such sanctions has resulted into energy scarcity, and this has in fact turned into the rising or shooting up of the oil prices because most of the European nations are dependent on the Russian oil and natural gas. Right? And if the oil and natural gas has been cut by the sanctions, it would inadvertently lead to the rise in the prices, which is against the principles of free market. Right? Nevertheless, America is very clear that it should explore some new avenues, especially for food security and energy security, and that's the reason why it has a West Asian policy or US West Asian policy is being renewed, and the visit of the American president to Saudi and Israel. In this sense, he has reprioritized his administration's interests, compelled by the Russian-Ukraine war and its ramifications on the global food and energy situation. Now, in Saudi, he has signed a bilateral cooperation, for 5G technology and integrated air defense. Very important. And in fact, Mr. Biden also welcomed Saudi Arabia's plan to strategically invest in projects aligning with American partnerships for global infrastructure and investment goals, also called as PGII goals. Right. So Mr. Biden is perceived as having skirted critical issues in bilateral relationship. It's being said by many thinkers that Biden has actually, skirted some critical issues, had sidelined some critical issues in the bilateral relationship, such as the release of political prisoners, which is still due, then clemency for opponents of the regime, and easing of travel restrictions, and especially for those who hold dual citizenship in the two countries. Now, the consensus to sustain a United Nations mediated truce in Yemen is the major focus behind Putin's visit to Saudi, because there is this Yemen civil war, or civil war in Yemen is not yet ending, and in this war-based country, uh, the participation of Saudi becomes very, very important. So therefore the meeting with Saudi prince holds importance in the backdrop of the Yemen crisis, and the consensus to sustain a United Nations mediated truce in Yemen is one of the important focus areas, first areas of this visit. Secondly, the opening of Saudi airspace for the civilian aircraft flying to and from Israel is also another first area, right? So, because Saudi and Israel are antithetical to each other, they are, belligerent, to each other. The opening of Saudi airspace for civilian aircraft flying to and from Israel is very, very important, you know, and it actually complies with the Abraham Accords, between Israel and the Saudi Arabia, right, where they would open up, various religious sites for the people of both the countries to, for the pilgrimages, and so on and so forth, and they are all mentioned in the Abraham Accords. Now, Biden also made it very clear that they tried to add a different hue, to the Abraham Accords by establishing a Negev Forum. Now, Negev Forum came after, the Negev Summit held in 2022 this year in the month of March, and it also talked about strengthening the Abraham Accords. So, therefore, this visit is very important as it has, has strengthened Abraham Accords and the Negev Forum. Now, after the Russian war, the global energy situation has completely, uh, you know, uh, gone a radical change, and there is a strong possibility that gas prices in America may surge as much as 3 times the current value before the American midterm elections in November. Right. So there are, uh, speculations that and there are assumptions, in fact, that the gas prices would increase by 3 times in the midterm elections in the month of November this year. So Russia is definitely, because there are many sanctions being imposed on Russia, and Russia is expected to retaliate by even halting, supplies to Europe ahead of the December 5 deadline. So therefore, this visit to Saudi is holds, very high importance, and it would ensure predictability in energy supplies, stabilize the energy prices. It would curb inflation, assure European allies of energy supplies before winters, and also convert these into domestic support for Democrats in the midterm elections. Right. So therefore, it is very, very important because of the new energy scramble in Europe. In fact, America has also led the Western effort to establish alternate energy supply routes to ensure energy security for Europe, even amid the limited Russian supplies. He also had several meetings with the heads of the state as part of his meeting with the Gulf Cooperation Council or GCC countries in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And although they all ended without any substantive breakthrough, he also had a meeting. In fact, the first leaders meet of I2U2 group. Now, I2U2 group is also being dubbed as the West Asian Quad. I2U2. It stands for India, Israel, and the 2U stands for UAE and United States. Right? So India, Israel, UAE, and United States together are called as I2U2 group, right? Also referred as West Asian Quad. So in this sense, India is there in the project, uh, including the Quad in Indo-Pacific as well as the West Asia. Now, this is very important also in the backdrop of the true pullout from Afghanistan. Well, the reorientation in the United States West Asia policy is something which is because just after his visit, even President Putin of Russian Federation also, had a trilateral summit at Tehran, Iran, and Iran has always been an ally of Russia, and the other country which I was mentioning the trilateral summit is Turkey. Although Turkey is not directly an ally of Russia because it is a NATO member, but they have a common thread which actually makes them together, and that thread is the Syrian civil war, right? So they both are on the same page as far as the Syrian civil war is concerned, right? So therefore, the Russian President Putin also had a trilateral meeting with Iran in Iran and the Turkish leader at Tehran. So this is all about this article. I hope you enjoyed the session. Press the bell icon for regular updates to like, comment, and share. Uh, and and please drop any question in the comment box. We'll be more than happy to answer your all queries. That's all from my side. Wish all the best. Good day. God bless you. Bye.